This year marks an important anniversary in the swamps, the 80th birthday of the nation's chief prophet and jester. Zhirinovsky is truly a mirror of Russia, a mad, aggressive, senseless chauvinist with Nazi tendencies. It's no surprise that even after his death, he remains an idol for millions of Russians.
I think he is a kind of genius of our time, a person who exists in a very delicate balance between the world of reality and the world of the unseen. In other words, he balances between foresight, unusual superhuman abilities, and human emotions.
For Russia, Zhirinovsky is like Vanga riding on Nostradamus. Wolfowitz managed to write 100 volumes of his thoughts, record thousands of incoherent interviews, and even buried a time capsule with his predictions. So, if you want, you can find prophecies for every occasion in his works.
What's going on?
Ukraine is in semi-darkness.
Where is security?
Where is security? Where is my security?
Naturally, Russians try to find only something positive for their pseudo-country in every word Zhirik says. NATO will collapse, America will go under, and Ukraine is about to lose. Russia will become a superpower and Russian ballerinas will land on Mars. And now, for the anniversary, they've revealed new secret notes from the man who basically privatized the word scoundrel.
Scoundrels and villains.
Zhirinovsky's son claimed that his father predicted the end of the special military operation in 2026, of course, with Ukraine and the West being defeated. But judging by recent events, the prediction might only come true halfway. The special military operation will indeed end this year, but only with the collapse of Russia. Even the most cautious Western and the most fanatical pro-Z military experts admit Russia is at a military dead end. They have no strength left to advance, while Ukraine, on the contrary, is seizing the initiative in the war. For the first time since 2024, the occupiers have started losing territory. Recently, Ukraine liberated the city of Stepnohursk in the Zaporizhzhia region.
In total, from January to April, the Russian armed forces occupied 410 square kilometers in the Donetsk region. Meanwhile, 5,397 square kilometers remained under Ukraine's control. That's more than 13 times as much. You can calculate for yourself how many years it would take Russia to capture Donbass at this rate. Overall, this feels like a turning point in the war, says Sir Lawrence Friedman, Emeritus Professor of War Studies at King's College London. If the Russians have nothing to show for their efforts, I wouldn't be surprised if things start to fall apart in some places.
They're running out of soldiers, running out of money, and public patience has turned negative. Maybe Zhirinovsky was right that the special military operation will end in 2026. Though with somewhat different results, ones that would have him spinning in his grave like a hydro turbine. 23%. That's not me, just so you know. The secret prophecies for this year don't end here. Some mediums have appeared, claiming that Zhirinovsky's spirit contacted them and delivered a message: the clown will leave. Naturally, Russian propaganda gleefully squealed. He means Zelensky. Zelensky is finished. After all, for many years, it was their rabid Russian television that called him a clown.
Hello there.
But in today's reality, this prediction might not please Russians at all. It's now obvious that the world's main clown and laughingstock is Putin, not Zelensky. Putin has become the subject of jokes. Putin's actions provoke sarcastic smiles even from the most fervent patriots and his closest circle. Putin has turned into a walking meme. Just listen to what he recently said about Germany.
Volkswagen is dying, Porsche's dying, the glass industry is dying.
So, well, the fertilizer sector is dying too.
But for what?
The FRG, the leading economy of the European Union, right?
Is teetering on the brink of recession.
It would be far more beneficial for them to concentrate their efforts on rescuing their own struggling auto industry and substantially increasing the wages of their workers.
This is coming from a man whose own Avtovaz and Kamaz have basically gone bankrupt, while factory directors and businessmen are throwing themselves out of windows. Putin is advising the German leadership to focus on the economy instead of foreign policy. This is Putin talking, the man who has ruined his own country and squeezed it dry for the sake of his foreign policy ambitions. you know?
When everything is calm, measured, and stable here, we get bored.
Stagnation.
We crave some action.
Putin is either schizophrenic or a clown, and one doesn't rule out the other. So Zhirinovsky's prediction could very well come true, just like his other grim prophecies about Russia's fate, which people on the other side of the border don't really like to talk about. And Wolfowicz's predictions are interesting.
The peoples of Europe, Africa, and Asia will curse us.
Because it was the Russians who created this monster state.
We will tell you about what Russian fans of predictions always keep silent about. Zhirinovsky promised that Russia would face a wave of internal turmoil and separatism. He feared that because of the leadership's stupidity, the country would collapse like the USSR.
Unfortunately, the situation will only get worse.
Zhirinovsky also issued warnings about Putin personally. He said that if the pale moth comes to power, he will try to stay on the throne forever, and his rule will be catastrophic. According to Zhirinovsky, half of Russia will perish, and Crimea, Donbas, and other occupied territories will have to be returned.
We need to give Crimea back, give up Donbas, return Abkhazia to the Georgian south, give everything back.
To dismember the country.
Zhirinovsky also foresaw large-scale interethnic and international conflicts within Russia, and this is no longer a prediction, it's reality. The level of hatred in Russia is off the charts. Discrimination and humiliation based on nationality have become widespread.
A shocking story of a Sakha woman. She was denied a job in Yakutsk because of her non-Slavic appearance.
I wanted to get a job. I called on the phone, they agreed to an interview and set a time. I show up at the appointed time, all dressed up in a white shirt and everything, ready to get hired. And when they saw that I was Sakha, they refused me and said over the phone, "We thought you were of Slavic nationality." And they said, well, they told me that I didn't have an accent, and because of that, they thought I was of Slavic nationality, or at least appearance, and they refused to hire me.
And it's just absurd when, in the capital of Sakha Yakutia, they don't let their own people work. But that won't happen when, instead of Moscow-appointed officials, people who genuinely care about the people come to power.
Among Russians, ultra-right, Black Hundreds, and openly Nazi organizations like the Russian Community are becoming popular. Society in despair and apathy is becoming radicalized and starting a witch hunt. The enemies are anyone who is different.
Once again, Russian nationalists are testing the patience of the Kazakhs. This time, it was the leader of the Russian community, Tkachuk, who spoke out. It's all straight from the Kremlin playbook: a fabricated state, Russian lands, and other imperial nonsense.
This Russian family's from Kazakhstan, which didn't exist before the revolution. Bolsheviks mapped the territory, seizing Russian lands.
So now, our Russian people have been forced to flee from Russian lands to a drastically reduced historical homeland in order to escape primitive Russophobia.
What kind of creatures torment Russian people like this?
Do you really think we're going to put up with all this much longer?
I wonder, when Bashkortostan becomes free, will all these Tkachuks also claim that the Bashkirs were invented by the Bolsheviks?
Of course, you can see Zhirek as a clown, which he basically was. But you can't deny that many of his predictions actually came true. For example, back in 2016, he foresaw a partial mobilization in Russia.
War.
Get ready for mobilization!
All right, I'm ready.
Zhirinovsky very accurately predicted that Russia would massively use convicts in the army.
The first prisoners who fought alongside me, that was on June 1st during the assault on the Ugledar power plant.
Zhirinovsky even stated that the Kremlin would eliminate Nemtsov. Unfortunately, he was right about that too.
Nemtsov is like Trotsky today.
He's waiting for his ice axe.
I don't want that, but without an ice axe, he won't go anywhere.
Of course, there were some rather naive and mistaken predictions, like the claim that not a single missile would strike Russian territory.
Not a single missile will land on Russian territory.
I've never heard anything more ridiculous in my life. But
overall, all the grim forecasts about Russia are gradually coming true. The phenomenon of Zhirinovsky is not that he had some superpower of foresight, but that he spent 30 years within the Russian power system. He studied it thoroughly, so he was able to predict its actions and the consequences of those actions quite well.
I'm sure he didn't consider them forecasts or predictions. He just said it because he felt it. A prediction doesn't involve the concept of choice. If we talk about what he actually did, he analyzed.
That's the paradox of Zhirinovsky. Being an unhinged Russian chauvinist, an instigator of hatred and war, he was fully aware that all of this would end in disaster and collapse for Russia. And perhaps he was quite glad that he went to Kobzon's concert before his worst predictions started coming true.
Very often he would say, I can, he says, say things harshly, quickly, bluntly, I just don't have time to explain, but that's how it's going to be. And indeed, that's how it turned out. Then, but I was right, I did warn you. Why didn't you listen to me?
I want to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated manner to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. We do not aim to mislead, but simply emphasize humor. Please take this with a smile.